What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content here on my channel, then make sure you hit the like button and make sure you hit subscribe so you can help decide what direction the content on my channel goes in the foreseeable future. Okay, so I wanted to kind of relaunch this comic book concepts idea, which is to say where we go through and just talk about these things that have a place within the realm of Marvel Comics, but don't really fall in the category of like character explanations, but don't really fall in the category of team explanations either. Either it's because there's so little information about them or because they only really ever had one notable thing or something along those lines. But in this video, we're going to be talking about the Black Order of Thanos. Now, the Black Order of Thanos was basically revealed during Disney's D23 weekend, which is an event that they put on every 2 years, where they basically showcase all the upcoming projects that exist under the Disney banner. Of course, Star Wars having been bought by Disney, we end up seeing a lot of Star Wars stuff, and with Marvel having been bought by Disney, a lot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff is thrown under there. And while there was a trailer released for Infinity War, which has not been made public, Disney also showcased to everybody that the Black Order is going to be part of Infinity War. Now, the Black Order being rolled into Infinity War is a pretty big deal, and the reason why is because it shows us just how capable and how much of a demagogue Thanos is, in the sense that he can basically rally people to his cause. But in Marvel Comics, the Black Order is actually really new. They appeared as part of Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers leading into Secret Wars 2015. And so the result was that the Black Order simply just served the purpose of helping Thanos in invading the planet Earth. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the Black Order are not like equal to Thanos. Like, it's not like they're Thanos's friends. They're basically servants. They exist to serve the whims of Thanos. But the reason why this is so cool is because while we're not given a whole lot of history between them, which is to say we're not really given the origin stories of the Black Order, we're not really told where they come from, we do know what each individual member is capable of, and we also know that it's both fear and admiration as well as a desire to basically inflict as much destruction and conflict as they possibly can, as well as bolster their own level of power, which is why they allied themselves with Thanos in the first place. But the first member of the Black Order that I want to have a discussion on here is actually a guy by the name of Corvus Glaive. And the way the Black Order works is that Corvus Glaive is essentially like the leader, so to speak, of the Black Order, in the sense that he's like the right-hand man of Thanos. He's the one that serves alongside the will of Thanos and basically implements his will as far as what it is that the Black Order is going to do. But Corvus Glaive is kind of like this military tactician who's an absolute genius in almost every form of combat, which is to say when he goes to invade a planet, he studies all forms of warfare that planet has ever engaged in and then figures out the best way to invade that planet and the best way to attack it. Now, the way this comes out is that he basically has, superhuman strength, speed, durability, endurance, nothing wildly insane. He's not able to like manipulate reality or anything along those lines. And that's what we're going to find with most of these members of the Black Order, is that in comparison to the power of Thanos, they just don't have the same kind of thing that he does. But Corvus Glaive does have immortality insofar that he carries a blade with him. And so long as the blade is never destroyed, he will always end up staying alive. The reason why this matters is because during the events of Thanos' invasion of Earth, there came a point where Corvus Glaive's body was totally incinerated. But because of the fact that his spear was kept intact, when the son of Thanos encased Thanos himself, as well as Proxima Midnight in this sort of amber container in order to remove them from being villains or anything like that, Corvus Glaive's sword was encased as well, and he actually simply began to regenerate because of the fact that the sword keeps him alive. Now, we're not told explicitly why. We're simply just kind of told that's the way that it is. And so it really just kind of seems to be this idea that the sword has some essence of his soul inside of it or something along those lines, but we just kind of have to take it for what it is. Something else to point out here is that when Thanos and the Black Order arrived on Earth and Corvus Glaive was tasked alongside the other members of the Black Order to basically seek out and combat the different superhero teams with the Avengers, basically being off planet, Corvus Glaive led an onslaught against the X-Men and completely wrecked them. I mean, it just totally dominated them. It was unbelievable. It was one of the craziest things. There was basically nothing the X-Men could do to overcome the forces of Corvus Glaive. Now remember, it's not because Corvus has powers, it's because he's such a good, strategist when it comes to military tactics and so on. Now, following Corvus Glaive comes Proxima Midnight, again, the wife of Corvus Glaive. And the idea here is that Proxima Midnight served as the Black Order, but also has a different set of abilities to a degree than Corvus himself. Now, again, we're not given the backstory of how they ended up coming together, but with the idea of Proxima Midnight, her role in the invasion of Earth came alongside basically her goal in tracking down Atlantis and then basically forcing Namor the Submariner to bend a knee to the will of Thanos. Now, she comes with like invulnerability and strength, speed, endurance, more or less the same thing as Corvus Glaive, but she's also a master combatant. The difference here is that she actually has a spear that allows her to basically cut through almost anything, basically cut things down to a molecular level. And so again, it's one of the most notable aspects of her character because her ability to use this weapon can affect different biological beings different ways. One of the most notable of this is when she fought the Incredible Hulk. And during that story, during the events of Infinity, when she attacked the Incredible Hulk with her spear, it forced the Incredible Hulk to revert back to Bruce Banner. One of the things that wasn't explained is why. We don't know, for example, if it's like the relationship between Vibranium and Colossus. Colossus, of course, if he's exposed to Vibranium, his organic metal skin will immediately recede whether he wants it to or not, and he'll go back into his human form. We don't know if it was the exact same way with the Incredible Hulk when Proxima Midnight attacked him, and then the Incredible Hulk just receded and Bruce Banner came out. We don't really know what the case was. All we know is that basically just kind of happened there. But it was a really good way for Marvel to sort of introduce the concept in, and then in turn, make her a more notable character. Otherwise, she would have been a pretty useless member of the team. But one of the most notable individuals who are part of the Black Order is actually someone by the name of Ebony Maw. Now, the funny thing about Ebony Maw is that he can delve into magics and sorcery. The most impressive display of Ebony Maw's abilities came in the form of him dominating Doctor Strange. And that's one of the craziest things here, because remember, Doctor Strange is a multiversal entity. I mean, he's a guy who's powerful enough to influence the multiverse. I mean, classic Doctor Strange, the version of Doctor Strange that we had before the 1990s, was one of the most powerful beings to have ever existed in the history of Marvel Comics. But even after Marvel depowered him, took away a large portion of what it was that he was capable of in order to try to make him more relatable, he was still wildly powerful. And the Ebony Maw popping up and basically dominating the mind of Doctor Strange, turning him into a pawn and forcing Doctor Strange to release Shumagorath, who's like this multi-dimensional, enemy that's insanely powerful, is just a display of just how capable the Ebony Maw is. Now, Ebony Maw in turn also influenced the son of Thanos, Thane, to basically turn against his father and encase his father in amber in the first place. And so again, it's really kind of cool to see this character being introduced into Infinity War, because the Ebony Maw would basically be an enemy of Doctor Strange. It could very well turn into a circumstance where the Infinity War event breaks out and Doctor Strange is powerless to stop Ebony Maw. That's the kind of the level of strength that we're dealing with here. Now, over the course of the events of Avengers and New Avengers leading up to Secret Wars, we ended up learning that Doctor Strange actually wasn't using 100% of his power when he faced off against Ebony Maw. Instead, it was really more of like tactics and subversion, in the sense that Ebony Maw snuck up on Doctor Strange, influenced his mind, but even then, Doctor Strange actually sold 100% of his soul for all power in existence, for absolute power, which is something that happened later on down the line when the Illuminati, basically Marvel's New Avengers, faced off against what passes for Marvel's version of the Justice League, more or less. But it was still kind of a cool situation, because we're still talking about a guy who was able to overpower a pretty capable being. I mean, the Ebony Maw being able to overpower Doctor Strange is a pretty big deal, because despite the fact that he wasn't using 100% of his power, he should still have been perfectly aware of events that were going on all around him, and the fact that Ebony Maw could sneak up on a guy who has telepathy and telekinesis and, the ability to see the future to a degree and different things like that is a testament to what it was that he was able to pull off. Now, moving on to Black Dwarf, he's really not as interesting as some of the others, because Black Dwarf is basically just like the strong guy of the team. And that's really it. I mean, there's really not much going on in terms of what it is that Black Dwarf's capable of. During the original invasion of Earth by Thanos during the events of Infinity, Black Dwarf was actually tasked with invading Wakanda and taking out Black Panther. The funny thing about this is that because Wakanda was so technologically advanced, Black Dwarf actually found a lot of resistance by the Wakandans themselves, specifically from Black Panther and the Midnight Angels. Now, the Midnight Angels are basically Black Panther's inner circle of the most capable warriors who are all women. And it's a really cool concept because they are a force to behold when it comes to any major combat scenario. And we've actually saw a couple previews of them during the Black Panther trailer. I don't know if you noticed them, but they were basically the bald women. They were the ones who seemed to stand in like military positions and seem to hold positions of power. The Midnight Angels basically, study almost every conceivable form of martial arts, some of which are basically like these martial arts that originated in Wakanda or are an amalgamation of other martial arts styles combined into one. And so again, they're pretty formidable. This combined with all the different forms of technological advancements that Wakanda had meant that when Black Dwarf tried to invade Wakanda, he was basically fought off and he was ultimately defeated and then actually cast out of the Black Order by Thanos. Now, none of this really mattered because eventually later on he was destroyed by Ronan the Accuser, but in terms of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Black Dwarf looks like he would be more of a character that would be paired up against like Thor or the Incredible Hulk or something like that. It would make sense that that would be the case. Now, the other half of this is that with the Infinity War event proper, Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet is going to have so much power that Thor and the Incredible Hulk wouldn't even stand much of a chance in the first place. But again, including Black Dwarf in the events of Infinity War is going to be kind of interesting because having him fight alongside his brother Corvus Glaive and his sister-in-law Proxima Midnight is going to be kind of a funny situation. Again, assuming they keep those familiar relationships intact. Now, this brings us to Supergiant. And this is one of the funny situations about this is because what Supergiant does is basically fulfill the nature of the Infinity Stones themselves. When it comes to Supergiant within Marvel Comics, she was a character that basically had the ability to dominate the minds of others, which is to say she could control their minds in their entirety. She could basically make them do anything that she wanted to do, regardless of who they were or even what their capabilities were in terms of maintaining blocks against psychic attacks. Now, when it comes to characters who were like Omega level telepaths, which is to say the most powerful kinds of telepaths in the Marvel Universe, Emma Frost, Charles Xavier, things like that, they could probably resist it. But when it came to like Black Bolt of the Inhumans, he was basically used by Supergiant to attack the Avengers and the Illuminati and basically ward them off. Now, of course, she ended up meeting her defeat when bombs were activated by Black Bolt's brother Maximus the Mad, which resulted in her destruction. But the fact remains, she played a relatively small role. I mean, she really wasn't that huge, that impactful during the events of Infinity. Instead, she was just kind of there for a little while and then she engaged in a couple things here and there. And that was really about it. I mean, there really wasn't a whole lot that she added to it. But something that I hope you guys notice is that for the most part, these members of the Black Order all represent aspects of the Infinity Stones. When it comes to like the Power Stone, for example, the stone that represents absolute power, strength, energy projection, different things like that, that could easily be manifested in the form of Black Dwarf. When it comes to using tactics, when it comes to using the ability to manipulate individuals into achieving certain goals or recognizing the environment around them, the Reality Stone, for example, that could be manifested in the form of Corvus Glaive. When it comes to all these different aspects, they all tie into the nature of the Black Order themselves. But it also begs the question, what role will the Black Order serve when it comes to Infinity War? Honestly, I would say they're just going to be the first front attack. They're going to be the first individuals that the Avengers face off against, or at least all the heroes that are going to be there. It's going to be this sort of taste of things that are going to be coming later on down the line, and it sort of makes sense because during the original Infinity Gauntlet story, it was almost like the opposite. It was basically Adam Warlock mustering the forces of those superheroes who weren't killed when Thanos blinked out half the life in the universe, and it was Thanos facing off against that first line of superheroes. Ultimately, it was revealed to be a distraction, and Adam Warlock actually had this whole conflict going on so that in a moment of arrogance, Thanos would let his guard down and the Silver Surfer could steal the Infinity Gauntlet, which he failed to do. But the second role that Adam Warlock put into play was basically the cosmic entities that Thanos had to face off against. Infinity War and the Black Order seem to be the opposite, that the Avengers are going to face off against the Black Order first. Most likely they're going to be successful, they're going to overpower them, which is going to lead to them facing off against Thanos directly. And that's when things are going to get absolutely crazy and absolutely hairy, because we're going to see Thanos basically manipulating all space and time and crazy things, probably throwing planets around, no idea. But it's going to get absolutely bonkers in terms of the power that we're going to see. But again, the Black Order in Marvel Comics are basically the lieutenants of Thanos. And that was really it. There wasn't really a whole lot to them besides that. Some of them lived on. Some of them continue to go on. For example, Corvus Glaive re-emerged in All New, All Different Marvel in the Thanos solo series. Proxima Midnight continued on as part of Thanos' cabal alongside Namor the Submariner and a handful of others, but that was really about it. The other members of the Black Order were basically all killed off. Supergiant, the Ebony Maw, well, the Ebony Maw survived and came out in All New, All Different Marvel, but Supergiant, Black Dwarf, they were all basically obliterated, during the events of Infinity. So again, it'll be an interesting scenario to see how things unfold, and I'm pretty excited for it. It's just kind of an interesting situation to bring them in. But in any event, if you guys are new here to Comics Explained and you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps, and make sure you hit the like button if you dug this. And yeah, we're gonna go ahead and bring this video to an end, and I will catch you all later. Peace.